Nepotism. It kind of stinks sometimes. If you don't know what nepotism is, it's when you use your connections in an industry to get jobs for your family members. And it happens pretty much everywhere to some degree, but where it's really noticeable and probably where it has an outsized impact is in the entertainment industry. And about a year ago, I think Vanity Fair had done an article about Nepo babies. So there was like a bit of a discourse about it back then, but it feels like it's maybe starting another round because Gwyneth Paltrow, we love her, you know, goop, jade eggs that are very porous. You should definitely put those in crevices, you know? Gwyneth Paltrow rejects Nepo baby term because there's nothing wrong with doing what your parents do. It's an ugly moniker. Gwyneth Paltrow briefly entered the Nepo baby discourse in January when she commented on an Instagram post of Hailey Bieber wearing a shirt with the moniker on it and wrote, "I might need a few of these." Now, Paltrow, the daughter of actor Blythe Danner and director-producer Bruce Paltrow, and who is an Oscar winner in her own right, entered the discourse more forcefully by telling Bustle the term Nepo baby is an ugly moniker. Now there's this whole Nepo baby culture and judgment that exists around kids of famous people, Paltrow said when her 19-year-old daughter Apple got brought up. She's really just a student, and she just wants to be a kid and be at school and learn, but there's nothing wrong with doing or wanting to do what your parents do. Does Apple Paltrow act? Because the way that she's describing it here, it sounds like maybe her kid is being accused of being a Nepo baby without even like going into acting. Which, like, I can get that. I can understand why that would be annoying if your daughter just happens to be, you know, related to famous actors but isn't trying to do that. Being accused of nepotism in that case is kind of bullshit. Nobody rips on a kid who's like, "I want to be a doctor like my dad and granddad," Paltrow continued. The truth is, if you grow up in a house with a lot of artists and people making art and music, that's what you know, the same way that if you grow up in a house of law, the discussions around the table are about the nuances of whatever particular law the parents practice. Yes, there is an institutional knowledge benefit from growing up with your parents in the craft, whatever craft that may be. That's not universal. Obviously, there have been kids who grow up and have no interest in their parents' profession, or who grow up and aren't very good at their parents' profession. But anyway, we'll get into that. I think it's just kind of an ugly moniker, she continued about Nepo baby terms. I just hope that my children always feel free to pursue exactly what they want to do, irrespective of what anybody's going to think or say. Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a child of actors wanting to pursue acting. I think that is totally fine. I think that is totally reasonable. More power to them. Actually, less power to them. Because the problem... I've got a couple other comments to go over before I really get into that. The term, short for nepotism baby, went viral in late 2022 due to a New York magazine. It was not Vanity Fair, it was New York magazine. Cover story on the topic. It prompted many actors who are the children of actors to speak out on the matter. Kate Hudson, the daughter of actors Goldie Hawn and Bill Hudson, shrugged off the term in an interview with Independent. I didn't know Kate Hudson was the daughter of Goldie Hawn. That means she is the brother of, what's this guy? The guy who played U.S. agent in Wyatt Russell. Yeah, she's Wyatt Russell's her brother then. Huh, that's cool. The nepotism thing, I mean, I don't really care, Hudson said. I look at my kids and we're a storytelling family. It's definitely in our blood. People can call it whatever they want, but it's not going to change it. I actually think there are other industries where it's more common, Hudson continued, maybe modeling. I see it in business way more than I see it in Hollywood. Sometimes I've been in business meetings where I'm like, wait, whose child is this? Like, this person knows nothing. I don't care where you come from or what your relationship to the business is. If you work hard and you kill it, it doesn't matter. Yeah, if you work hard and you kill it, it doesn't matter. I mean, that sounds reasonable. Jamie Lee Curtis, the daughter of actors Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh, posted on Instagram around the same time that the Nepo baby discourse is designed to hurt. I have been a professional actress since I was 19 years old, so that makes me an OG Nepo baby, Curtis wrote. I've never understood, nor will I, what qualities got me hired that day, but since my first 2 lines on Quincy as a contract player at Universal Studios to this last spectacular creative year some 44 years later, there's not a day in my professional life that goes by without my being reminded that I am the daughter of movie stars. The current conversation about Nepo babies is just designed to try to diminish and denigrate and hurt. When asked about the term for a recent Variety cover story, Ethan Hawke, the father of actor Maya Hawke, quipped, "Put simply, I'm a Nepo dad, and I'm not embarrassed about it." Okay, I was actually tempted to make a video about this back in like January. And the reason I was tempted to do it back then is because a channel that I quite like, Red Letter Media, if you've ever watched them, they had something to say about it, and it felt like they were kind of hitting on what people don't understand about the criticism, because they don't understand they don't understand the criticism fully. And so I wanted to just play this little clip from one of their videos where they were talking about it to try and get into it.
Was it Vanity Fair that had that article about Nepo babies?
Nepo babies, yeah.
And I felt compelled to chime in on that because I wanted to defend our pal Jack Quaid, who was included in the Nepo babies.
I saw he was on the cover. I didn't read the article or anything.
Like, you know, talking to him in real life and hearing some of the things he said about his career, and you know, he does not seem to fit into the Nepo baby category. Like, I am one where I think that I am not someone who gets upset about nepotism, because it exists in almost every industry.
Sure.
And
a guy who runs a plumbing company, the company ends up in the hands of his kid when his kid gets older.
I think one of the things that makes Hollywood nepotism a different beast than nepotism in other industries is that Hollywood is probably one of the most visible industries, and it's one that people see the glitz and the glamour of it, and that means that there are far more people who really want to get into acting than will ever actually make it in Hollywood. Versus, if you want to become a plumber, you can go to trade school and become a plumber.
Right.
You're in charge of the company now, Gus.
Yeah, and there's also the concept of if your parents are two talented actors, I believe in genetics, and that sort of stuff can.
I don't know if the talent is necessarily genetic. I mean, for example, like Will Smith is a very charming, talented guy. Jada Pinkett, I think she's quite talented in her own right. And Jaden Smith is probably the worst child actor I've ever seen in my life. Like, Jaden Smith is definitely fits the Nepo baby archetype, right? Never gave a good performance, but Will Smith kept pushing him in movies, kept making big budget movies with him headlining it. I think probably people could agree that Jaden, out of everybody, probably somebody who didn't deserve all of those chances in Hollywood and only got them because of who his parents are.
Be passed down.
Unless you're Tom Hanks.
I just got this feeling, man, that this summer is it's about to be a white boy summer. You know? I mean,
Chet Hanks.
You guys, can vibe with that and get ready, you know?
Well, no. Colin Hanks.
That's Colin Hanks. Yeah. I was thinking of the other one.
The other one. Yeah. No. It's not a certainty.
Right, and that's when it's distracting. If people complain about nepotism, it's usually because they're watching something and the child of a famous person is in it, and they're just awful. Yeah. Then, complain about the performance being bad, and they only got it because of who their father was.
And look at any industry. There's so many cases where someone only got up to this level because they knew. Not what you know, it's who you know. It's the old adage goes. But you have like famous musicians who, you know, their child ends up being, you know, a musician as well, because it's in.
Oh, I should point that out. Actually, if we're talking about famous musicians, Taylor Swift is probably one of the most famous pop stars in existence. And like, I'm pretty sure her parents were like rich executives somewhere who basically were able to pay her way into prominence. Now, say what you will about her level of talent, I tend to think she's a little overrated, but she certainly has a very rabid and very dedicated fan base. So a lot of people out there definitely do see value in her art. But she had a finger on the scale in getting to that point.
In their blood, or it's what they grew up around.
Yeah.
So they pick up a lot of that. Like, you know, like a plumber would grow up around his plumber dad. Hey, let me show you how to fix this thing. Or it's built into the DNA, nature versus nurture kind of situation, where it's like either you learn how to you learn about acting, you're in the business, you're in the industry, and your parents do it, and you're sort of just like scooped up.
Yeah.
Or you could take it completely different route. There's for every one Nepo baby, there's probably 10 children of famous celebrity actors who just go off in their own path.
Oh, sure.
So you can't just cherry pick and just say like, that's a nepotism thing. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's like, it's like a case by case basis. Because then you have someone like Pauly Shore, who is like the
Mitzi, his mom.
Yeah. So okay, I think that's probably enough. I just wanted to have their talks on it. So what I think is failed to touch on in these discussions, it's not just like they brought up Jack Quaid, who is the son of Dennis Quaid, and I like Jack Quaid quite a lot. He is in Star Trek Lower Decks. He plays Brad Boimler. He is in The Boys. He plays the main boy. He plays Huey. He is a boy. I'm pretty sure that's what that show's about, right? They're boys. No, I've seen The Boys. Isn't he the new Superman in My Adventures with Superman? I need to watch that show. I know I did a video talking about Lois Lane exposing or like forcing Clark to reveal his identity to her. But yeah, anyway, Jack Quaid is a talented guy. There's no question about that. He's a very charming guy, very nice guy as far as I can tell. But he got his foot in the door because his dad is Dennis Quaid. There are 100 Jack Quaids out there who are waiting tables, who didn't get the opportunities that Jack Quaid got because Jack Quaid is Dennis Quaid's son. Even if there's no specific Dennis Quaid going in and saying, give my son this role because I'm Dennis Quaid, there's still a finger on the scale. There's still oh, you're Dennis's boy. Well, come on over here. Let's get you into this thing. Hollywood is a really tough industry to get into. And I saw, as Thready said in chat, it's not nepotism, it's networking. There's certainly a big aspect of that. It's who you know. But I think there needs to be a re-examination of the ways that people get into, the acting industry, because it's a tough industry. And if you just want to be an actor because your parents were actors, and that gives you automatically like 100 times more likelihood of having that career, that really sucks for everybody else who's as talented as you, but was not born with the advantages that you were born with. Yeah, Valhalla Video says it's like how many people on Skid Row right now could have been Jack Quaid. It's a shame. Yeah, and I'm not saying this to diss on Jack Quaid. I like Jack Quaid. I think he's great. I like the stuff that I've seen of Jack Quaid, but that doesn't mean that he didn't get where he was because of who his dad is. Yeah, a lot of those unhoused folk went to LA to be an actor, which is a valid dream and should be achievable. Yeah, and like I understand not everyone's going to make it as an actor because there's only so many things that are actually produced every year, and there's far more people who have dreams of being a Hollywood star than there are positions open for being a Hollywood star. It's just it's a very competitive industry, and most people aren't going to make it in. It's unfortunate. But I think the industry could do to re-examine ways that they hire, that they cast, that aren't just putting a thumb on the scale for people who are only there because their parents were already there, Nepotism is a problem everywhere. I'm sure you've heard stories of a plumbing business that everyone swore by for decades and decades, and then the owner retired and gave it to his son who didn't know jack shit about it, and it went to crap. And it's easy to point to all of those stories as an example of why nepotism is bad. But it's not just that nepotism gives people jobs that they didn't deserve. It's that it robs people of the opportunity to even be considered in the first place. Especially when we're talking about like child actors. I've thought about the ways that like almost every single child star has basically been groomed into doing it. How like that the whole like child actor industry is basically just rife with abuse from parents who are just like a lot of these child stars are child stars because their parents basically abused them into doing it rather than out of genuine desire to go into that industry. And it's like one of the only industries where we're just like, oh yeah, no, child labor, that's totally fine. I mean, sure, there's some protections laid out for child actors, but not enough, I don't think. Certainly not when, you still have recent stories of just the ways that child stars are treated. I was actually talking with friends about this. I kind of have the opinion that I don't really think that we should have child actors, but that does pose problems because like that does limit some of the stories that you can tell. Of course, there's lots of things that are illegal to do that would limit the stories that you can tell. Like you can't have an authentic movie in which somebody dies by just killing somebody on screen, right? So you simulate it. And like if you're telling a high school story, well, we've been casting 20-year-olds as high schoolers forever, and nobody's ever really complained. I mean, there's some talks about it, and there's probably some discussion about how having 20-year-olds play high schoolers might make people have a perception of high schoolers as more mature than they actually are. But I generally think that for most things, we just shouldn't have child actors in them. And if that means having, adults playing much younger kids, maybe it's weird, I don't know. But also, like, maybe there's value in certain things, like from an educational standpoint, like, say, Sesame Street, where having kids being able to see themselves in a situation like Sesame Street in particular was always built for urban children. It was like specifically geared toward like Black and Latin kids, and being able to see themselves in that and know that the show is being targeted toward them and their way of life. And so having kids in there, like maybe there could be a situation where like as like shows like Sesame Street film, instead of going through talent agencies where you've got a bunch of kids whose parents are abusing them into it, you could just say have a random casting call at a high school, and like you cycle through, sorry, not high school, at like an elementary school, because it's it's Sesame Street, so it's younger kids. And yeah, you could just cycle through different elementary schools, make sure you don't go to the same one twice. That way you don't have parents who are like, oh, we've got to get my kid into this school district because this is a school district where Sesame Street cast from, right? I don't know. There's a lot of ethics just to think about in that regard. Valhalla Video says that's a brilliant use for AI. That's a bigger topic. CGI, yeah. Well, okay. So actually, CGI that's a good, interesting point, because actually, I remember the first time that I saw a CGI animal in a movie was 2004's The Day After Tomorrow, and I thought that was ridiculous. They had CGI wolves, and I was just like, what? You couldn't get actual wolves? It's Hollywood. You guys have all sorts of animals. But now that I think about it these days, I think it's actually really good that we can have CGI animals in movies and not do animal exploitation. I actually think, for the most part, I think it's probably better to have CGI animals than to exploit actual animals. Like, we should never have an elephant be a performer in a movie again, because elephants should not be held in captivity. Back in the 70s, if you wanted to have a bantha, you needed to put a big mask on an elephant, right? But nowadays, if you want to have a bantha, you just do it in a computer. And I think that's great. And even like Captain Marvel, Goose, the cat, they do have a live cat for some of those shots, but Goose for a lot of the movie is CGI, and not just because Goose shoots tentacles out of his mouth, right? But also because Brie Larson's allergic to cats. And so anytime she and Goose are on screen together, it's a CGI cat just to protect her. And like, obviously for like cats and dogs, those performances, generally, they're probably a little bit more ethical just because we have such a, like cats and dogs are so ingrained with humans. Like, these are domesticated animals specifically bred to be our companions at this point. And so there are ethical ways to get them to work. But when you're talking about exotic animals, probably just CGI them. I think that is a much more ethical way of going about it. Valhalla Video says, did they CGI the T-Rex or was that practical effects? I can't remember. It was both. There was obviously several CGI shots of the T-Rex, but actually quite a few of those shots, they had built a full-size T-Rex animatronic. Like the shot where the T-Rex lowers his eye to look into the Jeep and they're shining the flashlight on him, and the eye dilates as the flashlight hits it. That was a practical effect. That was a full-sized T-Rex. But anytime you see the T-Rex like fully in frame and walking, in order to do that, it had to be CGI. But if the T-Rex could be partially in frame, they could use the animatronic. Jurassic Park gets a lot of credit for its special effects, which is totally deserved, but a lot of people think that all of the dinosaurs in that movie were CGI, and there's actually, I think it was like 63 CGI shots in that movie, and for a lot of the rest of it, it's just practical effects. Like, for instance, the Triceratops, we only see the sick Triceratops lying on its side, so that's pretty easy to just build up the Triceratops. That was a practical effect. But even things that you might think were CGI that were actually practical was they built a full bodysuit Velociraptor. They had like a guy in like a whole suit to be a Velociraptor. Not for the full shots where it's like jumping up on the table and stuff. That's CGI. But if you see its legs walking around, that's a guy in a Velociraptor suit. Anyway, that's my thoughts on nepotism turned into my thoughts on the ethics of child actors, which turned into my thoughts on the ethics of animal performers, and now the ethics of dinosaurs. I think it's fully ethical to use CGI dinosaurs. Technically, you could have a live-action dinosaur performance because birds are dinosaurs, but that's not what people think of when they're saying dinosaurs. So, Anyway, that's my thoughts. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm trying to get my channel monetized, so your view means a lot. Don't forget to toss me a like and subscribe and ring the bell. I stream every Monday and Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific, so catch me live and join in on the convo. You can find all my socials in the description below, and thank you to all my patrons with a very special shout out to my Whale Shark tier patron Ryan D and my Anemone Friend tier patron Piftle Cakes. Your support means the world. Catch you next time.